Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories this hour. CBC projects that Mark Carney's Liberal Party wins the Canadian election and is set to form the next government, though it remains unclear if he will secure a majority. The result marks a stunning turnaround for the Liberals, with Carney capitalising on anger at US President Donald Trump's trade policies. India and Pakistan exchange fire for the fifth straight day along the Kashmir border following the deadly Pahalgam attacks. Pakistan's defence minister says an Indian military incursion is imminent as both sides remain on high alert. Power is restored to most of Spain after a major outage hits part of Spain and Portugal, causing traffic and telecoms disruption. Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez says the cause is still unknown and urges people to avoid speculation. Russian President Vladimir Putin announces a three-day ceasefire for the May holiday, but Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky calls it manipulation and demands full Russian withdrawal. France plans to increase pressure on Moscow as South Korea condemns North Korean troops in Ukraine. Israel boycotts a UN hearing on aid as border fighting intensifies and Gaza's humanitarian crisis worsens. Egypt pushes for talks while hostages' families urge global action. Shin Bet chief Ronan Bar announces he will step down on June the 15th, saying he wants to allow a professional handover after 35 years of service. His resignation comes just 6 weeks after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu tried to remove him. At least 26 die after two vehicles strike an IED in northeast Nigeria's Borno state, the centre of the country's Islamist insurgency. The safety group confirms the incident in a memo. The death toll from Saturday's explosion at Iran's Bandar Abbas container port rises to at least 70, with over 1,200 people injured, as firefighters contain blazes and toxic emissions 2 days later, state media says. Our top story today, Mark Carney's Liberal Party has emerged victorious in Canada's federal election, with CBC projecting that they will form the next government. However, it's still uncertain whether they'll secure a majority in Parliament or if Carney will need to rely on other parties to form a minority government. The Conservatives, led by Pierre Poilievre, gained ground but were defeated in this pivotal contest. While there were tears of disappointment at Conservative headquarters, Liberals celebrated their win with jubilation. This result marks a dramatic turnaround for the Liberal Party, which has struggled in the polls. Just 3 months ago, Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau as leader, capitalised on growing anger over US President Donald Trump's trade policies and his tariffs. The Liberals are projected to win 161 seats, but may still fall short of the 172 needed for a majority. If that happens, they are expected to form a minority government under Carney, striking deals with other parties to secure key votes. The Bloc Québécois is leading in 23 states, while the NDP holds 8. The Greens are back on track to win 2 seats. We are joined by Quintin A. Hitchcock, American political consultant located in Washington, D.C., to discuss this election in more detail. Quintin, thank you very much for joining us, as always. Obviously, Mark Carney and his Liberal Party have come back from a 25-point, they were behind 25 points. If they do win this, as CBC projects they will, could this be one of the greatest political comebacks in recent times?
From where I'm sitting, one of the greatest political comebacks I've ever seen. And I think the Liberal Party and Prime Minister Mark Carney have a lot I think Trump has a lot to do with this. And I think there was a lot of anger amongst a lot of voters who maybe weren't ordinarily liberal voters in Canada that were quite disgusted with this ongoing trade war, this ongoing turmoil between countries that have been tied at the hip, literally and figuratively, for decades. So this has been quite the referendum on President Trump. And we saw earlier that about 7.3 million early votes came in Canada, which is a record high by far, meaning a vast majority of voters in Canada voted early rather than voted on election day. And as I said earlier, that usually means one of two things. That means that either they're disgusted with their government that they have, or two, they have a great sense of urgency. And I think that sense of urgency is the ongoing tariff battle that they have with the United States.
Yes, Quintin, I wanted to delve a bit more into the leader, which is Mark Carney, a political newcomer, obviously, but a man with an experienced banking background, an economic background, the former governor of the Bank of England and the Bank of Canada. Did this election fall at precisely the right time for him, outside circumstances coming in at the right time, and as opposed to Pierre Poilievre's, who has had years of political experience?
Oh, for sure. I mean, politics is all about timing, Thomas. And we see this a lot at every level of government and in almost any democracy, that sometimes you get great candidates that don't win elections. And sometimes you see candidates that are really not great candidates. And for whatever reason, the timing is right and they're successful. I think Mark Carney is a solid candidate. I know he's received a little bit of backlash from moderate voters in Canada, some liberal voters in Canada. He's a very green candidate, which is fine. But I think he was a good enough candidate. He was the right candidate at the right time for the right country. And I think a lot of voters in Canada identified him as the right candidate to take on Trump on an economic battle. So I think that was one of the biggest advantages he had over the opposition. I think that is one of the biggest reasons why he won. I think most Canadians, and they've polled this, most Canadians believe that Mark Carney is taking the right approach and handling the ongoing tariff battle the right way. And he's doing it with strength. And I think he's sending a strong message, not just to Canadians, but to people all around the world, especially Americans, that Canada is not going to be pushed around, even by the biggest economy in the world. So to answer your question, absolutely. He is the right candidate at the right time. Timing turned out to be everything in this race. You mentioned earlier that this race was really nothing short of a roller coaster. Conservatives for many months having upwards of a 20-point lead in national polls, many different national polls. I think going into today's race, I think the Liberal Party had anywhere from a 2 to 3 point lead in most national polls. And by all accounts, it looks like they're going to pull out successfully. So this is definitely a referendum, I think, on President Trump, and this a lot of turmoil, quite frankly, unnecessary turmoil between two countries that should be best friends in the world.
Yes, and Quintin, obviously we've mentioned it previously, but prior to January, the economic woes of Canada were at the top of voters' minds, and then Donald Trump came along and something happened. He's obviously even tuned in during this election, this 24 hours of voting, with a tweet, once again, emphasizing his annexation plans. How crucial was Trump in this election, the deciding factor?
I'm hesitant, Thomas, to say that he was the only factor, because I don't think that would be accurate. But I do think that he was the strongest factor. I don't think that if President Trump had engaged in a lot of this economic turmoil and this economic confrontation with Canada, we might be having a different conversation right now. So I think it's fair to say, and I think it's a completely reasonable opinion, that President Trump probably had the greatest influence in this race.
Quinn.
The question now becomes, where do we go from here, both from the Canadian perspective and from the American perspective? The two economies, it just doesn't make any sense for the two economies not to work together. I think one side understands that. I'm not quite sure the other side understands that. You mentioned the quite provocative and provoking tweet or Truth Social post that President Trump put out earlier today, I believe 12 hours ago, right in the middle of Election Day voting, essentially mocking, I think we can call it that, mocking this election in Canada. Who knows if he's serious? I don't know that it matters, but he definitely wanted to have influence. I don't know if this is the outcome that he wanted. It could be, it could not be. That's for that's for President Trump to answer. But he definitely wanted to have influence, and I think he's very aware of the influence that he did have, and it's very interesting to see, given all that, where Prime Minister Mark Carney and Trump go from here with their relationship.
Quinton A. Hitchcock, thank you very much for joining us and your valuable insights as always. Tensions are reaching a boiling point between India and Pakistan. Pakistan's defence minister has warned that an Indian military incursion is imminent following a deadly militant attack in Kashmir that killed 26 people, most of them being tourists. Islamabad says it has reinforced troops along the border and warns it could use nuclear weapons if its existence is threatened. Meanwhile, cross-border firing has continued for a fifth night across the line of control, with both sides exchanging heavy fire. Diplomatic ties are fraying fast. India has expelled Pakistani nationals and suspended key agreements, including the Indus Water Treaty. Former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif is pushing for talks, even as critics accuse him of appeasement. China is now calling on both sides to exercise restraint and is backing Pakistan's sovereignty, while urging a swift and fair investigation into the attack. We are now joined by Brian Thomas, correspondent located in Anantnag, Jammu and Kashmir. Thank you very much for joining us, Brian. What's the current situation going on across the line of control, Brian? We know that for the fifth night in the row, there has been some fire exchanged.
Well, clearly there have been a violation of ceasefire at the LOC at Kupwara and near the Jammu region itself. But clearly, if we talk about the place that I am in right now, Srinagar, yes, this situation becomes better now because of the tourists who have been coming here, even though, yes, clearly 46 tourist places have also been closed among 84 tourist destinations by the government itself. But there have been a couple of tourists, even though, yes, there have been 90% of cancellations there. But there were few tourists who were showing resilience and confidence also. And there, when we spoke to them also, they clearly stated that they're confident on the Indian Army and the forces, and that is what is making them stay. And that is the confidence that they are gaining to stay back to Kashmir also, because there were many people who were going to Pahalgam also. Yesterday, a very famous Bollywood actor also came to Kashmir also to promote Kashmir and the tourism itself. So clearly, because since 80% of the Kashmiri business is dependent on tourists, so they are heavily dependent on that. But clearly, when we were speaking to the people also from Dal Lake or from Lal Chowk, there were many people who were speaking about the fact that even though, yes, the situation has been worsened, but there are few people who are still planning to come, and there are still few tourists who are planning to stay back to Kashmir itself. Yes.
Yes, Brian, it's now been a week since those terrorists came and encroached on the border, on the Kashmir border. How is the area reeling from the terrorist attack that occurred?
Clearly, again, like I said, yes, the situation is difficult now. But yes, slowly and steadily, the security forces have been working around the clock 24/7 to ensure that there is peace in the region. The security forces have also clearly been enhanced itself. There have been heavy deployment also of the forces itself. And even the Indian Army, along with GNK police, they've been working around the clock to ensure there is peace and there is utmost peace in the region itself. Yes.
Thank you very much, Brian Thomas, for joining us. And we will bring you all the updates on that developing situation. Now we move over to Europe. A sweeping power outage left millions of people across Spain, Portugal and parts of France without electricity on Monday, triggering chaotic scenes and widespread disruption in the affected nations. In Spain, power began to return to the Basque Country and Barcelona areas, with parts of Madrid seeing power restored by Monday night. According to the national grid operator, about 90% of electricity has been restored in mainland Spain. Power gradually returned to various places in Portugal, including the Lisbon city centre. The grid operator, REN, confirmed that 85 out of 89 power substations were now back online. The issue is believed to have been stemmed from power connection problems between France and Spain, according to a representative from Europe's power industry. The Spanish Prime Minister said that the country had suffered a loss of 15 gigawatts of electricity generation in just 5 seconds, equivalent to 60% of national demand. Technicians were working to determine why that sudden drop occurred. Portuguese Prime Minister Luís Montenegro has also added that there was no indication that the outage was caused by a cyber attack. However, Sanchez says that the cause of the outage is still under investigation. Let's listen in to what the Spanish minister said.
Esta desaparición súbita del suministro es algo que los especialistas aún no han podido determinar, pero lo harán. Y las instituciones del Estado competentes y todos los operadores privados están trabajando de forma coordinada para comprender qué ha pasado, qué ha sucedido. Se están analizando todas las causas potenciales, insisto nuevamente, sin descartar ninguna hipótesis, ninguna posibilidad. Ya se ha restablecido el suministro en varios territorios del norte y del sur de la península, gracias a las interconexiones con Francia y con Marruecos, países a los cuales quiero agradecer también su solidaridad en este momento. También se han reactivado los ciclos combinados y las centrales hidroeléctricas de todo el país, algo que debería permitirnos recuperar el suministro en toda España pronto.
We stay in Europe but move to the east. Russian President Vladimir Putin has announced a 3-day truce starting from midnight, May the 8th. The Kremlin has said that Putin ordered a full cessation of hostilities to mark the 80th anniversary of Russia's Victory Day, which falls on May the 9th. Russia called on Ukraine to join the truce and added that there would be an adequate and effective response if Ukraine violates the ceasefire. In response, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says that the world did not want to wait until May the 8th. In his nightly address, he called for a full and unconditional ceasefire for at least 30 days to provide a basis for real diplomacy. Let's take a look at what the Ukrainian president said.
Ми ще 11 березня відповіли позитивно на саме американську пропозицію повної тиші. Ми запропонували своє у двосторонньому порядку Росії припинити удари щонайменше по цивільних об'єктах, хоча б по них. Запропонували також зробити повним і продовжувати на 30 днів припинення вогню на Великдень. Росія постійно все це відкидає і маніпулює світом. Намагається обманути Сполучені Штати. Зараз от знов чергова спроба маніпуляцій. Чомусь всі повинні чекати 8 травня. І тільки тоді припиняти вогонь, щоб забезпечити Путіну тишу на час параду. Ми цінуємо життя людей.
Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha also supported Zelensky, stating on social media platform X that if Russia truly wants peace, it should cease fire immediately and not wait until May the 8th. This comes after US Secretary of State Marco Rubio held new talks with Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov, having declared that this will be a crucial week in a US decision whether to halt its peace efforts. Meanwhile, Trump has said that he thought Zelensky was ready to give up Crimea, though the Ukraine leader has ruled this out several times. Russia has also said that it was ready to negotiate directly with Ukraine, but that recognition of its claims over Ukrainian regions, including Crimea, were imperative to resolving the conflict. Reportedly, Ukraine has denounced Russia's annexations as an illegal land grab and says it will never recognize them. Zelensky said that last week Ukraine would not legally recognize any temporarily occupied territories that has previously called Moscow's demand for Kiev to demilitarize incomprehensible. Moreover, France's President Emmanuel Macron has announced that Western nations would increase pressure on Russia over the next 10 days, and the next 2 weeks would be crucial in trying to start a ceasefire. Macron also said that he urged Trump in recent discussions to be tougher with the Russian president. Let's now turn to the Middle East, where Israel is under fresh international scrutiny as it boycotts a landmark hearing at the International Court of Justice. The United Nations top court is investigating Israel's decision to ban UNRWA, the UN agency that provides critical support to Palestinian refugees. Israel has refused to participate, denouncing the proceedings as politically motivated. It accuses the UNRWA of cooperating with Hamas, a charge the agency strongly denies. Meanwhile, Israel's military has said that it had struck more than 50 terror targets across Lebanon over the past month. Hezbollah's leader, Naim Qassem, has urged the Lebanese state in a televised address to exert pressure on the US and on France to ensure Israel abides by the terms of the ceasefire. Let's take a listen in to what the Hezbollah chief had to say.
نحن نعتبر أن الدولة مسؤولة عن المتابعة بالضغط على الدولتين الراعيتين أمريكا وفرنسا، وكذلك على الأمم المتحدة ومجلس الأمن وقوات الطوارئ الدولية. على الدولة أن تضغط، والضغط الذي مارسته الدولة حتى الآن هو ضغط ناعم بسيط.
At home, Israel is facing political upheaval. The ousted head of its internal security agency, Shin Bet director Ronan Bar, has announced his resignation. His departure follows a growing tensions with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over the government's handling of the Gaza conflict. Let's listen in to what Ronan Bar, the ousted Shin Bet chief, had to say.
35 שנות שירות בכדי לאפשר תהליך סדור של מינוי מחליף קבוע וחפיפה מקצועית, אסיים את תפקידי ב-15 ביוני. אהבתי למולדת ונאמנותי למדינה הן הבסיס לכל החלטה שקיבלתי בחיי המקצועיים, כך גם הערב.
In a related development, reportedly Egypt's intelligence chief, General Hassan Rashad, is set to meet an Israeli delegation headed by Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer in Cairo. The meeting is part of Qatar-Egyptian efforts to restore a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. Additionally, families of Israeli hostages have issued a personal appeal to US President Donald Trump, urging him to intervene and help secure the release of those hostages which are still being held in Gaza. Let's take a listen in to what the released hostages had to say.
As his administration approaches its 100th day, I urge the President to continue his commitment, apply pressure, restart negotiations immediately, and secure a deal now, before it's too late.
Mr. President, I stand before you not only with gratitude, but with a plea from the depths of my heart. Please, keep fighting for them. Use every ounce of strength, every tool you have to bring them home. Even now, my soul remains divided, half here, half still imprisoned with those we left behind. True freedom will only be real when every last hostage is free.
We once again move over to Canada for some breaking news. Jagmeet Singh has announced he is stepping down as leader of Canada's New Democratic Party. An emotional Singh addressed supporters after a disappointing election night, where the NDP is projected to win just 8 seats. Singh said, "We're only defeated when we stop fighting." A new party leader will be chosen soon. Let's now turn to the United States, where the White House launched a week-long celebration of Donald Trump's first 100 days in office. His focus remains heavily on his immigration crackdown, one of his strongest issues with voters, even as new polls show warning signs for the president. Trump advisors touted unprecedented success at the border, saying deportations are accelerating. About 139,000 people have been removed so far, and Trump's team says they are ramping up plans for the largest deportation effort in US history. Here's what Tom Homan, the White House Executive Associate Director of Enforcement and Removal Operations, said during a White House press conference.
Currently around 1.4 million illegal aliens who've been ordered removed but remain here in violation of the law. We will aggressively prosecute, consistent with long-standing law, those aliens for failing or refusing to depart or who takes other related actions aimed at hindering their removal.
Earlier, US spokesperson Caroline Leavitt posted a video on her X account of yard signs featuring immigrant mugshots that were posted across the White House lawn, while Trump officials dismissed polling that shows many Americans think he's focusing on the wrong priorities. A new APNORC survey finds only half of Republicans say Trump has had the right focus, with some of his own supporters expressing doubts about his economic policies and aggressive use of executive power. Trump is set to hold a 100th day rally today in Michigan's Macomb County and deliver a commencement speech on Thursday at the University of Alabama. In a recent interview, Trump said he feels more powerful in his second term, adding, "This time I run the country and the world." Earlier, Trump signed 2 new executive orders on immigration, including one that will publish a list of so-called sanctuary city jurisdictions. Despite falling approval numbers, Trump officials insist the administration is moving full speed ahead. Well, that's all we have time for, and we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world. Thank you for joining us.